Good day, everyone. Today's video's not shockingly different than one I've done in the past, but it's that time of year of a new class starting, and this one's the spatial analysis of social data, just spring 2023. So going to recreate some of the videos, combine some just based on the feedback from spring 2022 and move forward. So with that, today's going to focus on some foundational skills that we need to get familiar with because we're using it on an ongoing basis in Excel with filtering, sorting, copy and pasting, just simple tricks along the way. We'll use these throughout the semester, and we'll use these in other types of analyses as well, and you'll probably like these in other courses. With that, I'm going to add a part at the end just to show you how to map data, because on Tuesday, our Microsoft network, account ID was suspended, frozen. We couldn't access the network itself for Microsoft, so I couldn't do this in class. So we'll go over how to map the data. But with that, what you see in front of you is Little Rock's data portal, what we did in class. Now we want to come down to the safe city. And from here, we want to find the crime data for what we're using in class. This one's 2017 to current. There's also more historic that going back to 2015 and 16 if you want those specific years for something else. If we open this data set, we can go ahead and export it to CSV, or you can view the data. If you view it, it's going to look very similar to what you would see in Excel. You have variable names at the top. Each row is a specific incident along with a number of different characteristics surrounding each incident. Just by looking at this file itself, we have multiple spatial units of analysis. When I say that, we could view this data in a number of different fashions. If you think largely, this is all Little Rock data, so we could look at crime across the city itself based on crime type, the month, the year, that type of thing. We also have zip codes, so there's zip codes throughout the city of Little Rock, so it's broken down into smaller regions or areas. And then we also have it at the incident location, so we have the address along with the latitude and longitude of that address. So we could use that specific one, or we could use the street segment that it's on the 100 block. We'll get into that as the semester progresses, but for now, we want to use this data in Excel. With that, if you have not downloaded data before, I recommend using Google Chrome throughout the semester. It makes life easier. Microsoft Edge does give you some issues, and I'm not an Apple user, so best of luck with you Mac people. But if you have not set this up, I recommend in Google Chrome, if you come up to the top where there's the three dots, go into your settings, and then on the left-hand side, go ahead into your downloads. And this is where you want to specify where you want it to download. I already have this set to ask me where I want to save it every time, but you can change the location that it defaults to. And I typically take it out of my downloads folder and make my default the desktop. For the videos and the course, I usually use courses itself, but I'm going to select the desktop itself as my default. Select this and it updates for us. So we're going to exit back to our data set now. We can come up to export, and I want to export the CSV for Excel. This time I'm just going to go into the course folder, go into my spatial one, and if you want to add a new folder, right click, go down to new, I'm going to put in class exercise. So now I have a new folder created where I can save this specific data set, and it's just going to be LRPD week 1 data in class. And it's saved as a CSV file. For Google Chrome, it auto puts it at the bottom for you, so you could just open it automatically from here. I also want to show you another way of how to open this data. So I'm going to minimize the screen. I'm going to bring it over. If I can find where it just saved it to. There we are. Spatial class data. So I'm going to bring it here to where if you ever see a CSV file, we can right click on it. And if you have not seen what CSV data look like, I'm going to open it in Notepad as an example. And with that, you can see that the values itself within a CSV are truly comma separated values. So you can see here that our incident date is one variable, comma, incident number, comma, and then below it, you can see how those go together based on each row being a separate incident itself as well. All these correspond with the variable labels at the top. They're separated by a comma. That's what splits it up into different cells and rows within Excel for us. With that, You can also just open it straight into Excel. It will read it as a CSV. Oftentimes Excel will ask if you want to save this as another file. If it does not generate that auto screen, typically a yellow warning would come up here. Hop up to File. We want to go to Save As. You want to make this different from a CSV. Just want to make it a workbook. So the XLSX, and we're good to go. And now we have more functions and features available. Since it's no longer a CSV, it's a workbook. So if you ever get into later in the semester when we try to get into mapping and you see that it's grayed out here, that's because it's probably saved as a CSV. With that, if you look at the data, you might wonder, well, why are there a lot of pound signs? I can't read everything. Excel just doesn't know how much room you want to give each column itself. It brought them all in as equal. If we click up here between A and 1 where it's the triangle, and I'm just going to double click between the A and B, it's going to auto fit the contents of each column based on the longest one. So you can see date, number, incident number, the location, offense code. All of these have a bit different width based on how long the characters are, strings, or numbers within each specific column. It makes it a bit easier to see and work with and just digest what you're looking at. If you're familiar with Excel, this is probably nothing new, but it is helpful to know what you're looking at with it. So if you were interested in knowing how many different incidents you had, there's a quick way to cheat if you didn't know the count system or the count function. So we know the first row is actually variable names. So if we click on that, I'm going to hold down Control Shift and go down, and it's just going to highlight that first column. And it's going to go down to the bottom though for me, and I can see that there's 91,541. Keep in mind that first row is actually a variable, so we know this data set actually has 91,540 incidents in it. If you want to go back to the top, Control up arrow, and we're good to go there. With that, you might want to sort the data, and you can see it here, and an easy one to work with is the date. Since this is 2017 to current, you might want to sort it based on oldest to newest, newest to oldest. So I'm going to highlight the data set, and I get in the habit of doing that. So I just hit the triangle up here in the left-hand corner. And I'm on the Home tab up top, and if I come over, I have Sort and Filter here. And I can go ahead, and I always do custom just based on out of habit of what I do. I want to specify what I'm working with. Because oftentimes Excel will recognize that I have a date and it gave you the option of oldest to newest, but I always typically just do it on my own. And it's incident date based on the cell value. And let's do newest to oldest. So you can see today's the 18th and I'm recording this video. The last update came in on Tuesday, just before midnight was the last incident. We had a larceny on 3rd Street. But it's now rearranged your data set from newest to oldest. So if I were to scroll down to the bottom, we have an incident on New Year's Day, 1/1 of 2017 at fresh midnight. More larceny, burglary, sex-based offenses with rape, theft, and other crimes that do occur. Oftentimes you see an uptick on New Year's Day, especially early morning hours, just given more people are staying up past midnight on New Year's Eve. With that, sorting is extremely helpful to understand your data and just looking at it as a whole. If I wanted to sort it based on zip code or location or offense, I can do that. So if I wanted to sort it a different way, I can go into custom sort, and I want to do it based on offense description. Let's do A to Z to just change it up. We have ag assault as our first one. As we scroll down, it's just in alphabetical order, so we can see how those change here. So we're good to go. We can see that. The next step would be getting comfortable with filtering data. With that, there's a number of different ways to filter. For our purposes, I just like the filter tabs at top. So where sort was, just come down to the filter. It recognizes that first row as variable names, and you can filter based on the values below it. So if I came down to incident date, it recognizes that the year is the higher aggregate. If I opened up one of these and hit the plus sign, it's going to give me January, since we're only in January of 2023, but then it's going to give me every day that it has data for the most part already. And time, that's probably hour, they're more likely. Same with 2022, but we have all 12 months within it. Let's say I only want to filter, it's not going back up for me. Oh, it's never mind. I'm already looking at it. If you want to select just one year, just unselect the select all. So just remove that checkbox and say I want to look at, let's pick a different year, 2020 COVID year. Hit OK. It's going to restrict or exclude data. It's going to hide it for you. So you can see on that left-hand side, when we look at our row numbers, it jumps to 6,528. And we know this is a subset of the 91,000 that we were working with. So similar, if I were to do the Control-Shift down arrow, this time for 2020, I'm looking down here at the bottom, the count is 13,352, subtract 1 for that variable name up here. So we have 13,351 incidents in 2020, the calendar year itself. We could do that. And then say you want to also add a second filter based on a weapon type. So we can hop down to the weapon type. You can select multiple ones if you want, or if you only want to select one, you can do the same there. So with that, let's say, motor vehicle for whatever reason. So we applied another filter from that, and now you can see on the left-hand side, the rows have more jumps in them, saying they're passing over other ones. And you can see our count went down to 212. So in 2020, there are only 212 incidents that had a motor vehicle as a weapon, and they mostly look like aggravated assaults and a couple robberies there. Now, say you wanted to make this data set a subset and you wanted to work with it. We do this often, and I recommend always keeping the original data set and working with sub data sets from there. I'm still clicking cell A1. I'm going to hold down Control-Shift, down arrow, right arrow. So I'm only selecting those rows and columns of the 212. I'm going to hold down Control and hit C. That's copying these specific rows. I'm going to hit this plus sign down at the bottom to add a new sheet. Then I'm going to hit Control V. And it's pasting just those 212 2020 incidents that involved a motor vehicle. As I scroll down, you can see the 212, subtract the 1, so 211. And we're good to go there. If you want to rename this sheet, you can. I recommend it so you know what you're working with. So 2020 motor vehicle weapon. And it's an easy way to have a sub data set that you're working with that you can do more analyses with. With that, oftentimes in the homework, I'll ask you to show a screenshot or to snip. If you do not have the snipping tool already down here, you can do the quick search, type snip, and it'll bring it up for you. When it is open, just right click, and if you want to save it down here, you can pin it or unpin it from the toolbar. I just keep there because I use it quite a bit. But when I do this, you can go in to hit new and say I wanted to show that I renamed and relabeled this at the bottom for a new sheet. I'm just going to make a rectangle around that to show it. And it's copied this as an image. So you can either save it as a picture, or you can copy this and insert it into a Word document, say for your homework, showing that you did relabel this file itself. The big part is for your homework, make sure whatever I'm asking you to do is being shown in the actual picture itself. You can change, you can highlight. So if you wanted to make it even clearer to me, you can draw a box around it, an arrow, anything with it to make sure I get the point of what you're trying to depict in a screenshot to make it easier on my eyes. With that, that's a quick introduction just to some of the common sort filter items that we use in Excel. Quick way to open a data set, sort it, filter it to another sub data set. Oftentimes what I use it for is just that, filtering to make a smaller data set. Now, to spice it up and change it up, since we couldn't do this on Tuesday, what if you were interested in mapping this data? You could, I'm selecting cell A1, Control-Shift down right, highlighting the data set, coming up to insert. I'm going to hit 3D maps and open 3D maps. This is the part that wouldn't work on Tuesday. Our computers had a tough time reconnecting to the network for Microsoft, and it automatically picked up the latitude and longitude along with city, state, and the zip code for us. So as I just scroll in and zoom in, you can see where those 211 incidents occurred in 2020 that involved a motor vehicle as a weapon. You can change the theme of it. So if, obviously a lot of people know that I like dark scale. You can change it to a lot of different themes to depict what you're working with. And the really cool part of the CJ side and the crime world that a lot of policing get into, it's called hotspots and identifying crime clusters. We have that ability over here on the right hand side to change this into a heat map. So as you zoom in and out, you can see how those become hotspots, very similar to a weather map. Red means bad. If there's no color, that means there's not a dense area there. As you zoom in, you can see where some of those points are and the overlaps to it. But for now, this is later in a couple weeks, but a nice introduction to Excel, getting some feet underneath you. If there's any questions, please feel free to reach out. Until next time.